And so there's a connection to that, to the plants, right? Because the plants, if they give music, and they also receive music. It's whatever, it's whatever that, how you would say that, whatever that we receive, we also give in life. And that's how the
Mm,
world works, eh? But a lot of people don't think that way because they think as a plant or an animal as, just something, that's not in the same wavelength as a human being or to have the same capacities. And so really we're the ones that are lost really as the human race, eh? And the animals are still kind of intact to, and true to their own path in life, eh? And so how do we tap into that as we go back into nature and we sit with it, eh? It's not something, we have to be involved in it and be exposed to it to begin to understand it, eh?
mm,
And that takes us back to, places, even in the urban setting where you have trees, plants, whatever you may be, right? We go there and we go and fill that spirit cup of ourselves. We feel good after it, whether we're running, whether we're walking, whether we're just hanging out in the park or sliding down the hill, right? We at least have that little bit of connection to that nature, right? So we're actually absorbing whatever the songs of nature are singing to us because we may not understand it in our mind and our with our ear, but our heart understands it, and that's why we feel better. And so the song we would give also is, what energy that we carry, right? Maybe we're laughing. Well, if we're laughing, we're happy. What happens? Our surroundings are going to be susceptible to that, and it's going to give out laughter at the same time, right? That's one way a person can look at it, right? So these things kind of mimic those things also, right? So it's what we bring to it is what we'll get out of it. Eh?
mm. That's so beautiful, Leonard. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
for sharing that. And, when I sing to nature, it feels like a calling within me that my voice, it's a part of how I can communicate without words. And with sound, it's a way of honoring, but it's also a way of me feeling connected to
Mm-hmm.
nature.
Yeah, because you are part nature, like, your DNA is of that of nature. It's no different. Eh? We have water, we have elements of, in our bodies, metals, all kinds of different minerals. Eh? So, of course, if you feel that, and it's going to feel the same thing. Eh? We're not really much different in nature. We may have a different form of life, like look different, our life form, but nature has the same things we have. Eh? You look at it, you look at animals, they all have lungs, heart, and all that. So, it's just they look different in different ways their bodies work. Eh? Trees, same thing, right? There's a life force that's in them, and they still have that structure that they need certain things to survive. Eh? And I think when we use that vibration from our voice, because we've been given a powerful tool, and that powerful tool is our voice. And what we do with our voice is we create things, right? Now, whether we're going to create negative or positive things, that's kind of our free will that we've been given, and you look at it that way. So if we sing words, and we have a feeling into our words, of course it's going to create something, whether it's positive or negative. If we create something that's beautiful from our heart, beautiful things come from there. If we create something from our voice that let's say anger, in a negative way, that's what is going to happen at the same time because we're creating that at the same time because the power of our wind, eh? And you look at it's all basic, kind of makes sense that way, eh? Uh,
So what songs do you sing when you connect with nature? And
usually, the songs that I sing are actually there are certain songs that I'll sing that were given to me. Some will be songs about a plant, and the plant will will tell in that song what it does and how it's related in that relationship to the human being. So it's like the plant is the one that sang the song, but you're singing the song, but it's the words of what the plant is saying. And we call those in my language with the Scotchigan. In other words, they're sort of like the verses of that song, right? And so along comes it with, of course, the chant and and stuff like that. But really, what it's not really a chant for us. It's actually a vibration that we're creating through our sound to connect into a different realm, which is part of that spirit. And so through that, through the sound of your voice, you're able to do that. And then your intent, like, so if it's for, trying to be well or whatever, so you're going to use your voice to ask for that wellness.
Mhm. What I'm curious, what you'd recommend to someone who's in the city, maybe, or who doesn't have the same strength of connection with nature that you and I do. How can we communicate with nature with our voices? And
I think one of the things they do is a person has to open themselves up first, because I find a lot of us are robotic. We're kind of shut down and we don't want to explore the senses that we're given, or we're afraid to explore those things because in society it tells us, we have to be a certain way or do certain things. We can't even sometimes get in touch with our own feelings. And so we have to kind of be open to these things, be willing to explore and, to check things out and to, not in the mind, because if we explore things and try to understand things in the mind, if we're not conditioned that way, it's not going to make sense to us, because we try to live in a world of, where scientific world where everything has to fit in a certain box, And so when people come from that, it's hard for them to sometimes expand into different things, different parts of understanding, because they try to reason with things. We cannot reason with everything in life because there's a great mystery of everything also. And so part of that great mystery is also that journey of experience, right? And so in that experience is where you're going to slowly walk away from what you think is the truth to really finding what the truth is. And that's how a lot of people are looking towards those things now. And sometimes it's just what we follow. Like I think a lot of times as people follow what we call like the global dream, right? Where everybody wants to dream the same way or act the same way because society says you have to be this and that, and a lot of people are going against that because they're finding it's not working for them any longer, and they're coming to an awakening within their own being, which is part of their human involvement. So their spirit, or I guess their spirit is kind of waking up in a sense to try and seek out, okay, some better understanding to these things and how they work. And some people are really opposed to that also. They say they block that off and they don't open that up. And when they talk about stuff like this, they'll kind of frown upon it too. And even if some see it, even though some think they're awoken to it, and they come into some kind of spirituality or something that doesn't not make sense, they try to reason with it. And I find that a lot sometimes people, they're just like you can take them into a spiritual ceremony and they have an experience, but they'll deny it. They'll talk away their own experience and deny themselves because just trying to reason with it within their own mind because it doesn't fit in that scope, because it's different. The fluidity, of things like that is more vast than what we can sometimes comprehend or understand. And so a lot of this nature can awaken you into things like that. It just makes you a better person, a grounded person, a more of a openness.
Thank you. And I find right now there's so many people awakening because of the pandemic and are kind of forced to be uncomfortable and be in a place of unknown. And I'm curious if what your thoughts are on the pandemic and a way that we can move through it, you know, using the song of nature and embracing the natural ways of the earth.
Yeah, I think this pandemic has done a lot of good. Before we had too many distractions. Everybody made their own money. Everybody was happy because they didn't really need anybody, right? You lived your own world, your own reality. And so when it struck, now we're faced with, hey, we're not in control anymore of my own life. Anything can happen, right? How things can change so fast within a 24-hour period. Next thing you know, this is reality now, right? When we're forced to sit alone, in silence, we have nobody else but to listen to our own self now. And so when we start listening to those things, it could be a dark place for some people. Some people go through different things. Some people go through their feelings where they were, the trauma they went through, the hurt and the pain, the negativity. And some will go through the positive stuff, depending on where they're at in their mind. And so we've seen a lot of different things happening, a lot of rise in family violence, spousal abuse, child abuse, all kinds of different things, addictions, worries, fears, all of these things come to the surface. And before, people suppressed a lot of things. And when things begin to release, it made you look beyond, what you had, because now things are changing. There's no more that normality that you thought you had, and you had control you had. You finally kind of realize that, hey, this is something different now, that I should be looking at something else in life, because the way the world is going now, it's like we're in that, that cleanse, and also that self-destruction, and so we have to do something globally in order for us to, to come back and, help ourselves as human beings. Otherwise, we'll extinct, we'll go to extinction. Who knows what could happen, whether it's through sickness, through fighting, through war, through violence, whatever it may be. And the human being can be wiped off of this planet, and the planet will still continue to go on. But it's far more equipped to be able to handle different circumstances, and it can regenerate itself. And so we should learn from nature how to be, more in tune with our surroundings and other life forms that are around us, whether it's the plants, the trees, the water, the birds, or the insects, because we really need all of that stuff. The human needs all that, but the other things don't need humans. They can survive without us, this earth. And so nature teaches us that we have to come down to the level, back to the, grounding, so we can begin to work from there and to reestablish, our own connection to our own environment. And we can use nature to help us do that, because it teaches a lot of different things. You walk in a forest, you see all kinds of different trees and shrubs and plants. This is only just one example of how you can use nature as a teaching tool. You don't see the trees fighting. You don't see them, trying to wipe each other out just because they look different, or they have a different purpose. What they do is one tree will pick up another shrub, or another tree, or another plant, will give something to that other life form in order for it to thrive. But a human being is, if they don't fit into a certain category, or they don't think the same way, well, then it's a threat. We use fear a lot And if we're afraid of something, we're going to try wipe it out right away, whether it's a human or an animal or anything like that. We look at wolves, they always say wolves are dangerous and whatever. And then we'll try to wipe them out because they're killing other animals. They're just doing what they were meant to do on this earth, and that's to keep down population of certain species. And what we call the life, the cycle of life. They have a purpose. So we start removing things out of our own fears, or it doesn't fit into our box, and then we become afraid of it. And then what we do is we project that fear through media or whatever it may be, and then we try to wipe out that species. And we do that a lot with a lot of different things. And we even do that with our own selves, with the human race. So nature teaches us that we can live together. Because in the forest, how many species do survive? And sure, some will eat each other, like because of the natural selection of life, and one may be food for the other. But it doesn't totally, there's some balance in there also. So when you look at it that way, it's we can learn a lot of different things from there. And I think people are starting to wake up to these things now and are trying to say, hey, we have to take care of our environment. We have to take care of it because it takes care of us. So the environment that we talk about is the earth. And there's a big term everybody uses, we call it Mother Earth. Why would you want to hurt your mother? We all come from a mother. And if we have good relationship with our mothers, I don't think we'd want to abuse our mothers in any way, shape, or form. But yet we're doing that because the earth provides everything for us. Money, clothing, shelter, vehicles, everything comes from the earth. It doesn't come from, out in the air, it comes actually from the earth, right? And that's why we call it Mother Earth. Now you take that symbolism and you take that to your home and you apply that to your own mother, the one that gave you birth and gives you the nurturing and the love. Maybe some don't have it because of relationship issues, but most of the percentage of they have a connection to that. And so you gotta look at it that way. So this is what nature offers us in our life. And we have sort of teachings and stories that are kind of associated to that connection that we have.
Thank you, Leonard. And I'm curious, there's so many people that are in cities right now and don't maybe even have access to a forest.
Mm-hmm.
Would you recommend anything as a way of connecting back to their own inner nature and the nature around them?
I think even for people just to be outside if they can, go outside if you're able to. But sometimes people are locked in their homes too, maybe because of maybe medical reasons or maybe fear again, whatever it may be. But the other one that teaches a lot is about the sun. We look at the sun, it rises. We all have windows letting in some of that sunshine to come in and to actually, touch your body. These things, listening to the birds, and just being able to surroundings, the snow, the wind, the cold, whatever it be, the rain, the heat, because we're never happy with whatever happens. It'll be too hot or it'll be too cold, and all of these things have a purpose in life. If it's cold, there's a reason why it's cold. If the snow falls, there's a reason. That gives us our watershed for the spring. That runoff is one thing, like the snow when it comes. If we have a dry season, then we don't have any snow, then we're under the threat of forest fires, if we don't have any rain. So nature kind of takes care of itself and it's balanced. And so we look at these things as a nuisance sometimes, and not really understanding that it is a gift that we're experiencing these things, right? Sometimes even the cold weather, when it gets like it's been getting really cold, that cold snap, sometimes that helps with germs. and it eliminates some of that stuff, eh? And so, that's one way you look at it. It's sort of serves a purpose for us, but it serves a purpose for the animals also because they need that. And so when we get in tune with that and begin to appreciate the day that's set out in front of us, instead of looking at it, in our phone and say, oh, it's going to be -20 or it's going to snow, it's going to rain. We say, oh, what a miserable day. We could turn around and say, oh, we're going to have a beautiful day today. It's going to snow. It's supposed to be cold. There's reasons for that. It's going to help me in some way. So that's one way a person can start connecting with that, eh? Being, you know, I guess, attuned to your environment, eh? And then when you look at it too, there's the nature itself extends to the human being also and what's going on, in the world. So that too, we're a part of that. Eh? Sometimes we don't even know. We can look outside, like on my back step here, I look at a tree every day when I'm going to have breakfast. I look out the window and that tree looks like a person to me. The way it's shaped and the way it's kind of hunched over, it's a weeping willow. And I look at that tree and I say, "Wow, that looks like its head, its body," and I create a story for myself in the morning. I say, maybe that tree was out walking around that night, while everybody was sleeping and, you know, blessing people, right? To me, that's a good thought. Eh? So when I look at that tree, I'm happy to look at it every morning. So we could really tap into that, eh? And then this way it kind of helps us also in our own life, eh? That's just one thing, eh? And the things that we see in our front yard sometimes, what we consider weeds, are really good medicinal plants also. But if we try to get rid of them right away, we put pesticides or we yank them out and think of them as nothing, eh? Then it can help us too. And one prime example I'll use is a dandelion plant. Because it grows on grass, people bring out their herbicide or they go and pluck it out as a weed, eh? Well, that plant has a lot of vitamins in it. It's good for your kidneys. It has a lot of medicinal healing properties. But how can it give you its gift if you're trying to destroy it? So those things we kind of think about, right? One might look at it as being a nuisance, or other will look at it as a gift for healing it. So really, you've got to pay attention to our environment.
I love dandelions. I often pick them and braid them together and make wreaths and different things like that with them in the
Hmm.
springtime.
Yeah.
Um, I'm I'm curious, is there do you have any advice or recommendation on a way forward, for there's many organizations that might be listening to this that are working in social innovation and bringing people together around the world, and I'm curious if you have any insights for teams of people or leaders as we step into this world of COVID and beyond.
I think if people can come together for the greater good of humanity, then we'll be really moving forward a lot. People are to be comfortable to sit with each other, eh? Because we're so used to sitting in separate places. We call those like a separate fire. You have one fire here, one fire there, and whatever. And people, have become used to that, eh? Used to not sharing because people hold a lot of knowledge and wisdom also and don't want to share it because we come to a point in the human race where our knowledge we try to use that leverage as power and control. But if we are able to share it freely, that other people can, help themselves, to better things in life, I think that's a better way to look at this because then you're doing it for the greater good of humanity. To have openness and acceptance of other people, whether the way they carry themselves in their traditions or their cultures, And that too is, it's only starting to happen. For some, it's already begun. For some, it's kind of behind in times. Trying to understand each other. The relationship we have. Because if we really think about, moving forward and having a good life on this earth here, we're going to have to be able to talk and, have acceptance of each other, regardless of race, culture, language, color of skin. And there's not like that. There's a lot of things that are happening in this world, a lot of racism and, all of the injustices that are continuing. And people are turning a blind eye to these things. It's because maybe it may not affect them directly, but indirectly it does. And so when people start, coming together for the greater good of humanity, those are the things that a person will have to also look at, not only nature, but all of the things that are associated with the human life. And then from there, the world can change. But these are hard things for some people. Me, the way I look at it in life is I'm open to learn and from, somebody from a different walk of life, from a different tradition and culture. I will open up my mind and my heart to try and learn from them, because that's what we call respect, respecting another human being and having humility and truth and honesty. And so if people practice these things, and it's going to be easier, then you're going to be able to meet a lot of people. Then you can make connections that way, and you can, make bridges also. And that's what I think needs to happen in this world. And not one person knows everything either. Like myself, I only know so much, and I don't believe anybody knows everything. Otherwise, we wouldn't need each other. We wouldn't be in the state that we are in today. But having that humility to say that is a big thing too. And a person doesn't need a degree or a piece of paper, to say that they know something. Everybody knows something because everybody's alive on this earth. Everybody's been given, a gift in life, and an understanding. So we all have teachings. We all have something good to offer to humanity.
I'm seeing a big fire with lots of people gathered around it. And that bigger fire can burn more brightly together when there's caretaking and shared leadership, and also sharing our voices with each other, and knowing that we all matter. Our voices matter in
Hmm.
this world right now.
Yeah, and it's been like that. It's changed, and even before COVID, it's already had begun. But this kind of made it more open through, media for it to come even more stronger. So people are starting to awaken to that and stuff like that. Like we say, even in some of the ceremonial practices that we do or belong to, we see all walks of life coming to those gatherings now. People starting to explore and getting out of their comfort zone. And what they're finding is that human level is that people are welcome and they're showing love and respect to each other. And so coming back to that human level again, just like that ground into the earth, right? We want to come back there, right?
Thank you so much, Leonard. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we close?
No, I think, quite a bit was shared. I say, to, you know, that people, to keep on doing what's good, the goodness that they have within their heart, reaching out to others and actually coming together, for the greater good of everybody. So the children can have a future, and that we can leave them something that's good behind also. But we also have to advocate for the other beings of life, which are the plants and the animals and the spaces out there on the land, because nobody's advocating for those things. Well, there are people advocating, but we need to. I shouldn't say nobody's advocating. There are people advocating. What I should say is we need to advocate more on those things, for more voices to be heard. And so how that looks is, different for everybody, because we still need some of the things that we need to exist, like, our shelter, our heat, our water and stuff like that. And I remember a long time ago when we were growing up on the land, we were able to drink water anywhere. Even in these small streams, the water was clean and pure. Lakes were like that. In this day and age, it's scary to drink water from anywhere. And so what is that telling you? What are we doing? And the biggest thing that's happening in this world right now is water. If we don't change, one day there'll be a bore over water, because we can't live without it. It's essential for life. But if we're creating a lot of destruction, well, it's going to affect us also. And so coming up with newer, safer ways, different ways to help the environment also, I think, is good. We cannot totally stop things, because we're in that day and age in our life where we're depending on a lot of things, vehicles, social media, computers, stuff like that, phones. But maybe finding different ways that we can use more, different resources in a better way, more safer way. So, that would be good too, if we able to do that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Leonard, for this
Mhm.
time. And I feel very blessed, and I know many people will be blessed to hear your voice and hear your stories.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
I'll stop the recording.
Okay.